everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Relative Pitch. Today, we are so excited to have with us a famous individual, by the way, Mr. Kevin Fitzgerald, which is the associate conductor of the Jacksonville Symphony. Oh my gosh. Hi. Hello. How are you doing?
Hi, guys. I'm great. It's an honor to be here. I've been a big fan of the show for a while, so this is so cool for me.
Yay. Oh my gosh. Now Relative Pitch out in the world, y'all. Look at this. Look at this.
Happy streets.
Oh my gosh. So first of all, Kevin, I mean, like, how are you doing? You know, what are you up to? And like, first of all, you're newly appointed at Jacksonville Symphony. How is that going?
Yes, this is my first season. It's great. I am so blessed. This is like the best job I've ever had. I conduct a lot in a lot of different styles and types of music and types of concerts. The orchestra is fabulous. I'm growing a lot as a conductor because of all the opportunities I've been given. And they're giving me more and more and more, which is great. But that also means that I'm studying more and more and more and preparing more and more and more. So, you know, if you ask me how I'm doing good. I'm in a very good place. But I'm also, this is like between now and like July is going to be like a big crescendo of productivity.
Mhm.
If I can make it through the wilderness. But overall, very good. It's beautiful here in Florida. I mean, there's a lot of problems about Florida, just in general, but the weather ain't one of them. So I'm enjoying the weather. And yeah, life's good. Life's good.
Do you live in Florida?
Well, it's an interesting question. So I'm married to someone who's named Kurt, and he is in the North Carolina Symphony. And so we have like our home base in Raleigh, but because I'm not needed all the time, they only need me like half the time.
Mhm.
So I'm home half the time, doing other gigs some of the time, but I have to have an apartment here because it's like, you know, I need to be here for like stretches of time. Like
Right.
March is kind of crazy. I'm here the 3 continuous weeks.
Wow.
So yeah, there are like little pockets where I can like do a day trip or whatever, but in general, like I need that time to rest and to prep for the next thing. So that is, you know, kind of a challenge, but it's part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always
You
a
hear my
crazy.
folks.
That was always the craziest thing to me was learning that music directors can all the conductors like you guys like have different residencies and you're always like flying somewhere, driving somewhere. Like how do you? I mean, you just talked a little bit about how you balance that out, but really, when you first started doing this, how did you find that balance? How did you start? How did you learn to stay sane with knowing that you are going to be in 2 different places a lot throughout the week? How does that work?
Well, staying sane is not always possible, unfortunately. Well, you know, it kind of gradually became part of my life because before this, I was at the Alabama Symphony in Birmingham, and Kurt was actually there too, and that's how we met because we started at the same time. So, you know, for the first year and a half, I started in 2018-19 season. You know, I would make a couple trips a year to do different things, but I was basically there and he was there and it was fine. And then February of 2020, he won his new job, like right before the shutdown.
Wow.
I'm so lucky. And so that meant like we didn't even know what was going to happen with my job. We didn't know if like because the youth orchestra couldn't meet in person, if they were going to like fire me. Like we did not know what was going to happen. So we just put all the eggs in his basket, got a house, thank God, somehow in Raleigh. It's actually in a town called Fuquay Varina. Shout out to Fuquay.
Shout out.
It's a suburb. But anyway, so we bought that, and then they were like, actually, no, we're going to keep you on, obviously, and like the youth orchestra will go online, and that's when the beginning of the traveling started. So like most of the 2021 season, I was in Raleigh doing the youth orchestra online, which we could talk about. Was a blessed experience. um, and you know, and then they would say, okay, well, you actually do need to conduct the orchestra a few times, so then you're driving back and forth. But honestly, for me personally, just to, in general, answer your question, I like variety. I have my own personal routines, but same old day in, day out, same people, same places, same faces. It ain't for me. Yeah, I need change. I need change. It's what makes me feel like things are happening in my life. The same things, the same people, the same repertoire, whatever it is. I don't like too much stagnation. So it's good for me. It doesn't mean it's easy. I mean, you have to fly through Atlanta. We love Atlanta, but we don't love the airport. It can be a challenge. So believe it or not, even though RDU and Raleigh is a big airport, you can't fly direct to Jacksonville. You have to go through Atlanta. So I'm bringing this up because by the time you leave the house, go through the whole shebang and get to Jacksonville through the airport, it's about 6.5 hours. There could be delays. The drive is 6.5 hours.
Wow.
Very often less delays. So I usually just drive, get up early and drive. I love driving. I listen to podcasts. I listen to the rep I'm working on. I listen to music that I am not working on. I like being by myself. So it actually works for us. And Kurt, he's very independent, so it's good for him too. It is hard, I think, when you do have hard weeks, when you want support and you want that, one-on-one and you can't really have it, that's hard. But it's the cost of doing business. I mean, we're both doing what we love or doing our dream. We're very lucky in that way. And, neither one of us is going to be like, you need to quit what you're doing for me. Because, the other thing is, he has tenure as associate principal viola. We, as conductors outside of academia, never get tenure. So you just get contracts. Contracts that could be, I have a 2-year contract right now. Our music director, he just signed another 4-year contract. So you don't have that job security that he has. So it makes more sense in our arrangement for him to be like, his job to be like the focal point of like our domestic life. So we also have 2 dogs and they need consistency and a yard and all that. So, but they're coming. Kurt and the dogs are coming Tuesday because he's subbing with us as a viola sub. So, but yeah, it's not easy. And there are going to be weeks in the future months where I don't see him and it's going to be hard. But again, cost of doing business. I'm very blessed to get to do what I get to do and to be part of this world. And I wouldn't want him to like have to choose or anything like that. So
I don't think people think about that a lot, especially when you're in this professional world about relationships or anything in this profession about, and especially if you are with a person who is another musician, sometimes like on the opposite side of the country, right, or the world. I know for in the where I'm at UGA, it's actually funny. Our director of choral activities at UGA is married to the director of choral activities at Georgia State, which is in Atlanta, Athens, not too far away, but it's still like, we got to think about this. And what about if one of them wants to, go off to another position? Now we have to talk about it as a family. And then you bring kids or, if you have pets that are like your kids, now we got to talk about that. Like it's put a lot of more factors on this.
Oh, yes. I mean, there's a reason that many conductors have been married many times. It also just requires a lot of shut the door for several hours a day. The work is extremely time sensitive. So if the gig is coming up, no matter what else you have to say about it, like I have to work right now. You know what I mean? So although it's hard, I think just from seeing what I see from the other side, people who are non-musicians, it can be a little tricky to get them to really understand some of the things.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. Like if you're with someone and you love them and you can figure it out, but like there's always, the grass is always greener, 2 sides to the same coin, I personally just I'm one of my biggest flaws as a person is I'm impatient. So having to explain things to people, from the ground up, I don't think I could love anybody that much, I got to be able to say something in one sentence and you got to know everything that I mean by that. You know what I mean? But that's me. Some people are not that way. They want to escape from their work. They want to have a complete work-life balance, and that's cool. I don't really know if being in my line of work, if that's possible, because it's so all-consuming, the work. But maybe there are people out there who are doing it who disagree. Like, oh, no, I totally, disconnect. But I don't know. I feel like sometimes saying work-life balance is tricky because I think we should find a way to make the work sustainable so you don't need to like have a balance, and maybe your life could be more healthily integrated with things with work. I don't know. I mean, if you have kids, that's a whole nother thing. I'm never going to have kids, as far as I know. So,
I heard something very special about, the myth about work-life balance being 50-50. And I think that person was like, that can never be true because, that's 50% work and 50% your life. You're not giving, full value to both parts of you. So why not find a way to integrate them both where you find some joy in both of those?
It's true. And, I say this to students a lot, like, you guys work with students, they're being pulled in so many different directions and more and more and more. And I don't sugarcoat. I just say you can't really do much if you're trying to be balanced because nothing's really going to get, I'll put an asterisk on that all the time, right? If you look at a 6-month period, you can try to find some balance. But let's say there's something really important, a test or a big project, or you've got a college audition or whatever, you can't just devote the same amount of time to everything you do equally when there's something really important. You have to learn to prioritize and say, okay, my grades might slip for a couple weeks a little bit because I got to nail this, right? You know what I mean? It's all about priorities, I guess. But, that's the same thing. Like you can't, I'll say it to Kurt sometimes, hey, I've got a lot of rep right now. You're not going to hear from me for a couple days. Very much. I'm sorry. It's not personal. I'm just buried, and he gets it. But not everybody would be that understanding. So, it's just, I guess I just lucked out. But same with him, I'm a morning person. So I get up early and work. He likes to practice at night. And that's when I want to hang out is at night, watching TV or whatever. And he's, practicing till 11 midnight sometimes, and I am like in bed. I'm asleep. I'm in the bed. You know what I mean? I go to bed early. I get up early. That's just my clock. He gets up late, stays up late. So you just make it work. If the right things are lined up, if the important things are lined up, you can deal with most things. You can deal with it.
Make it work.
But yeah, make it work. Yeah, exactly. It's not easy. I think, balancing your personal life with your work life is so tough for artists because our work is so personal to us. And teaching too, like some of the people, like teaching is such an emotional thing because you're so attached to not only like the work, but the people in front of you. And like, I mean, I remember when I was teaching trumpet in Texas, which I did for a year in Houston, I would see these band directors and they'd be at the school from 6 a.m. to like 9 or 10 p.m. And I'm like, I mean, obviously there's a lot going on there. They're competitive, blah, 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 blah. They're being highly scrutinized, blah, 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 blah. But they also have this connection, this emotional connection that's making them work so hard, And then when both parents, there's so many couples who are band directors or, one's band director, and they're both at the school and, the kids take the bus from their school to the school the teacher works at, and then they just stay at the school and do their homework like they live at the school, so, but then they have the summer. So again, like I think when we talk about work-life balance, maybe it's not a daily thing, it's not a monthly thing, it's a yearly thing. Like how does my workflow work over the course of a year? This is my busy time, etc. So
yeah, that's how I think of it. And these two know, like June is my month to play golf. It's my month to play golf as much as possible. Hang out with my friends as much as possible. If we have a little trip, which they keep trying to make me spend money, do that. But like June is that month because then July we go back to marching band. In May we have some conferences. So June is my month to completely like stop teaching, and then we get back going the next month. Yeah. And that's my 1 month I can just be like, okay. And then we have our little conferences we like to go to, like Midwest. I view that as a vacation, not really a work thing. I'm like, I'm going to go and hang out, eat a lot of food, enjoy some
group drinking activity.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well, the one time I went, that's what I took away from it.
That pretty band prom.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Lauren, did you? I saw your brain thinking.
Yeah, no, this whole thing about, because maybe we also talked a little bit with Nathan like last week about like this idea of balance, but work life balance. What does it actually mean? I mean, the thing about us being musicians and artists is you're right. It is so personal to us. It is a passion to all of us who are in this, well, majority of us in this field. I will say that this is not a data entry job. Right, I had to be a little shady, but this isn't. It's not data entry where we can just leave our work at home or leave our work at work. Right, like we bring our work to be excellent, to be to our levels. We must bring our work home with us every single day. There's never a moment like I'll be like at home, I'm like, oh, I should send that email, or I should practice this, or I should be like doing this, da da da. There's never that moment where there's that disconnect, and it doesn't necessarily have to be when it is something that you are very passionate about, because the work that we all do is not just something we do to get a check, right? It's stuff that we do because we actually
Certainly not, man.
right,
Certainly not.
it's
If you
not
can
just
see
that.
these checks, certainly not.
So like it really is a balance, and I love this idea that the balance is not something that you think about daily, but more of like a over a 6 month, 8 month, yearly thing. You
Seasons.
look back, it's in pieces, exactly, and even like one year may be completely differently balanced than a different year, right? And like I remember Jonathan Hayward was here at the Seattle Symphony a while back, and I was out. He was newly married, and I was like, "Oh my gosh! Like how like how's Millie? Like how's everything going?" He's like, "Oh, wonderful!" And like he was just telling me about the balance. Is like sometimes we don't see each other for a month, and but we have to make the time to say we really want to see each other. Da da da. But they're both amazingly talented human beings and doing amazing things, and so it's this idea, like you were saying, finding someone who, first of all, understands that about you. You say one sentence and they're like, I already know what you're talking about. Like we don't have to like catch up. And so I think that is really important that people really don't think of enough about when it comes to this type of field. This passion, this work is more than just work for you. It is something you're going to bring up at home. It's something you're going to bring up at the dinner table. And you have to that is the balance to that.
Mhm.
So I'm curious about you, about how did you get here? We all have our background stories of how we got into music, but what was yours that made you want to decide to do this for real, for real?
Good question. So I'm from a fairly small town in Michigan. It's like 15 miles north of Ann Arbor. It's called Brighton, Michigan. And just to paint the picture, it's a very, very white, very Christian, very middle class. Actually, it had like a whole range of like economic classes, but not very diverse, especially when I was coming up. Uh, and pretty conservative in general. My family wasn't, but thank God. But like it was, it was pretty that. But they had I didn't have any music really growing up. Like, I mean, we would listen to music. Obviously, I love singing, how kids relate to music, movies and singing songs or anything. But I didn't have any like training until sixth grade when band starts. I mean, of course, I was in general music, but don't even get me started on that. I could do a whole podcast on what general music should be. But anyway, so they were like, okay, registration, you could either take gym or take brass class, which meets at the same time as gym. So I was like, oh, doing band.
Sign me up.
And my dad, he had done band in high school, so we had a very disheveled trombone at home. It was a disheveled trombone, and the case was just so gross, and it was just beat up. And like my dad was like, "Oh, you can play trombone like me," and I was like, "Oh no, man! I am not bringing that case on the bus."
No.
So they're like, "Okay, we'll rent you a trumpet. You can do trumpet, but you have to practice 15 minutes a day. Otherwise, we'll take you out of band." So, just like to put an asterisk there, my parents were not professional musicians. They weren't college educated. They were just sensible people who said you should practice at least 15 minutes a day.
Oh, there it is.
You don't have to be a genius, folks. Just throwing that out there. There's a lot of thoughts and prayers about practicing and blah, blah, blah. Okay. I was a sixth grader. I managed to practice 15 minutes a day. All right. Side note. So because I was practicing 50 minutes a day, I was making progress. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this. This is fun. This is kind of like my thing. Like, I don't really have a thing. Like, I wasn't into sports. Obviously, didn't want to do gym. I was a pretty good student, but I wasn't like, brainiac or anything. So this was like my thing. And I just got really into it really fast. And I started taking lessons with another band director. And he was actually a trombone player. So my first trumpet teacher was a trombonist, which actually really messed up my sound. And I had to like relearn some stuff. But he taught me a lot of other things that were very important. So things progressed pretty quickly. And by the time I was a freshman in high school, by the way, is this like an okay pace, or do you want me to like go at a faster? Because some people want like, okay.
This is great.
Okay. So by the time I was a freshman in high school, I was studying with the principal of Detroit Symphony. I won the statewide concerto competition. I thought I was like the bee's knees, I was that girl on the trumpet, first chair in all the youth orchestras, yada, yada, yada. It was a good time. And then one day he was like, my trumpet teacher, he was like, you're just not getting challenged enough. You need to go, you should go to Interlochen. You should look at the academy. You should go there. You need to focus more. He's like, your school's too distracting. They're asking you to do too many other things. Like, you need to focus on trumpet if you want to do this. That was always his caveat. He always said, like, if you really want to do this, I think you should do this. Not like objectively, I think this would be best for you as a human and a person. But if you want to do this, if you want to be a professional trumpet player, if you want to do music as a career, I think you should do X. So he was always very clear about that, which I appreciated, because he always reminded me that I had a choice and it was my choice. And he wasn't going to sugarcoat his information to me. He was just going to let me know that it was based on the choice that I could make or not make. Right. And it was down to practicing everything. Like, he's like, sometimes you knew it was bad when I would play something. He'd go, are you really sure you want to do this? And he really wasn't trying to be shady. I think he was trying to protect me. Now that I'm looking back, he was trying to say, like, this is a hard road.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of good people out there, all the sentences, all the things. But, I would hands down not be where I am today without him. Ramon, if you're listening, he's probably not listening. He's retired in New Mexico skiing, but he was a huge influence on me. So long story short, I ended up getting into Interlochen, got enough scholarship because we didn't have a ton of money. So I ended up, now it's like 70,000 to go there, but it was definitely not then. It was like 20,000, I think, just still a lot. So got a good scholarship, ended up going there. And that was like a huge turning point for me, because I think after like my initial development, to ninth grade, I think I was kind of a little too cocky and a little high on like the competition aspect of it. And so I get to Interlochen, and it's a fun, new, exciting place, whatever. And we have like our seating auditions for ensembles. There's a band and an orchestra, and there's 11 trumpets in the studio, and 3 of them can be in the orchestra, and the rest are in the band. And I think I got like 7th in the band. So I was like not that girl anymore. I was in the pack. It was devastated. And I called my mom, and I was like crying, which like hard. She's like, do you want me to pick you up? She's like, you got 2 choices. I can pick you up and you can be a big fish in a small pond, or you can make this about growing and learning. And this is the next chapter for you. You wanted to be challenged. You're being challenged, She's like, I can come pick you up right now and we can never talk about it again. Or you can stick it out and grow. And I obviously stayed. But I'm very blessed to have a wise mama. She wasn't like, oh, they're so dumb, you should have been first. Like, no, none of that, So, and I had a lot to learn. I had a lot of stuff figured out, but I had a lot to learn. I had to change my embouchure. I had to, not completely, I just did make some adjustments, bring my bottom teeth forward and like roll my bottom lip in more, technically, if you want. Yeah. And I had to just adjust my sound.
Conductor at that time. Who was conducting Interlochen?
So that was Byron Hansen.
Oh, wow.
The great Byron Hansen, who has since passed.
Yeah.
He was 70 something when I was there. He was the band director. And he was in the original Eastman Wind Ensemble in 1954. Sorry. I'm at the hall right now. I don't know if you could hear that PA announcement. Yeah, so, and then the orchestra was Matthew Hazelwood, but then he actually passed away after my first year, and it was Octavio Mazarocas, who's now at Michigan State doing the orchestra there. So he was there, and that was like one of his first jobs. You know, he was a new immigrant to I think he was just finishing up his DMA at Bowling Green. So he ended up playing a big part of my life because he was like one of my first conducting mentors. But anyway, so this conducting seed had already been planted, like 16, by my old trumpet teacher, who was like, he had this exercise he made me do where before I played anything, even an etude, he's like, tell me what you want to say with this. Like, before we even talk about playing, like, what do you want the story of this piece to be? Like, where's your head at? He'd make me have a narrative. And then he just really liked what I said. And he's like, I think you should think about being a conductor. I think you have something like your musical imagination. But then he's like, think about it, get a baton, get some scores, start practicing piano. But if you actually want to be a conductor, you have to pretend you don't want to be a conductor and focus on trumpet, because if you're not a good enough musician, you can't be a conductor. So that was very important information, and something we can definitely address later on. My thoughts on that, because I do think it's true. But anyway, so I started putting together little groups at Interlochen. Like, I think my senior year, I put two groups together, did the Strauss Serenade, did this Darius Milhaud Chamber Symphony, the one that's like string quartet. There's an all winds one that's very cool, but this is a winds string quartet, wooden quartet, harp. I think, I was pretty ambitious. I was putting together projects, and I was like, okay, this is definitely something I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of support from the faculty, and I had to ask people to like volunteer their free time to play, so thank God they did. And gosh, some of those people are like playing crazy places now that played those. I'm like, dang, I was blessed to have a very good people to practice on when I first started. Not everybody is that lucky. So long story short, I went through the college audition process, which was very intense. One thing I should say, just, your message is your message. When I was 16, right before I went to Interlochen, my dad had 3 strokes and a brain aneurysm in one day, like in one fell swoop. So he went from being like a business owner and like not super successful financially, but like very well respected in his field and like doing a lot, to like being completely incapacitated. He ended up, like, once the brain swelling went down, like, I guess you could say he was normal, but he wasn't actually, he was not himself. He was like a different person, but he couldn't work. And so there was a lot of uncertainty and stuff going on at home. And I didn't even know, like, if I was going to get to go just this school, but my mom was like, no, you're going. But long story short, he ended up developing dementia, and he actually passed away 2 years ago. Yeah. So after a 14-year decline, but I just want to put that out there because it kind of is the backdrop to a lot of what happened for me. So I went through the college audition process knowing my parents can't pay for college, right? I got to either get a scholarship or take out loans, or both. It was definitely both. And like, I didn't even have, I went, this is a private boarding school. So there are some rich ass kids at this school, and it definitely made me feel a certain type of way when, everyone's, parents are coming to visit, and like, they're flying with them. They're flying to Traverse City to pick them up, to fly to the audition, and then flying back with them, like escorting them through the whole process. And I definitely like was on my own, and I mean, I had other family members, try to help, paying, but I like at 17 years old, flew to New York City by myself to audition at Juilliard. I like did the thing. I was Mary Tyler Moore. Like, I didn't throw my hat, but if I had a hat, I would have. I was there, and I actually ended up getting waitlisted at every school: Colburn, Curtis, Juilliard, CIM, all the schools I wanted to go, and the only school I actually got into was Eastman. I didn't probably apply to enough schools. I should have applied to some universities, some more wider net kind of things. But I was applying to places that, like, Curtis and Colburn, you get to go for free, So I was just like I was just reaching as high as I could, So I ended up moving to Rochester and going to Eastman for 4 years. And that's really where, obviously, like my trumpet developed, but that's really where my conducting path really begins in a substantial way. So I've been very blessed to have teachers in my life. I would be nowhere without my teachers, from Miss Evans in 6th grade to all the way up to, the people I was working with at Tanglewood. Like I literally have very few original ideas. My ideas, I mean, the musical ideas, yes, but like ideas about how to do what I'm doing, I got from people. And this is why I believe so passionately in education, because if children are given the right information, they can do pretty much anything.
Yes.
But they have to be given the right information. And that is what I'm so passionate about, is making sure people who are teaching have the right information. And we're all, I think, in that journey together, like making everyone know more all the time so that everyone can benefit. But anyway, so I was very bold, and I had a conducting DVD from those projects I told you about. And after my first wind orchestra rehearsal, went straight up to Mark Scatterday, handed him my DVD, and said, "Hi, Dr. Scatterday, here's my conducting DVD. I'd love to know your thoughts." And I get an email the next day, like, "Come to my office when you have a chance." And then Mark was he was like my surrogate father for still is, but for at least 4 years. He took care of me in a lot of ways, and I took a lesson every week, and he gave me conducting opportunities that I was probably not ready for. But that's the thing I want people to know. You're never ready. You're never ready. You have to be brave enough to do it when you don't think you're ready, because that's the only way you're actually going to get ready.
Words.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can prepare all you want, especially when you're a conductor, because there's no way to simulate it. There's no way to really practice it until you're actually there with people. You can't simulate conducting until you can prepare, so that when you're in the moment, you have the awareness that you need to experience the thing, but you actually cannot simulate it, which is why it's so hard. Right. So I was given opportunities to conduct a lot as an undergraduate at a very high level, people who can play very well. So I'm very blessed. I mean, he could have just said, "Oh, yeah, great, keep up the good work, move on." He could have said nothing, but he was like, no, like he invested in me. And that's a gift he just decided to give me, and I didn't even know him that well. Like, it was after our first rehearsal, I'll never forget that rehearsal. We played a Gian Festival Overture. We played Handel on the Strand by Granger. We played October by Whitaker. Yeah. And one other piece. I think Lincoln Tripozzi was on that concert. So, classics.
Very much classics in the band. Classic.
So, anyway, I feel like I'm talking too much, but I guess that's the point of the podcast. Eastman was a challenge. I mean, it is a good school, but it's hard school. Because I was a trumpet major, but I was also a music theory major. So I take a bunch of other classes. And then, I was conducting, and I was essentially conducting as much as the grad students. Maybe not quite as much, but I was doing a lot. And I was working part-time in the admissions office, part-time in the library. I worked at a nightclub called Tilt.
Ooh.
It's now called Roar, but it was called Tilt, and it was in this warehouse, and I was a barback, and that was kind of like my escape. I had to basically pop an Adderall to get through the shift, but because it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights after school. Sometimes I would work a Thursday night, get home at 3, and have class in the morning. So.
Yep. That's the thing. Nobody, or especially the I call them gym pop people at a university, never understands like our music schedule. Like, they might have 1-2 classes a day. And I'm like, no, we go from class to like 8 a.m. all the way until 6. And then some of us have like work afterwards, and then 8 a.m. the next day. So like, no, it's really crazy. That kind of crazy going on.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I don't know how I did it. I do not know how I did it, looking back. I was just in it. I was terrified of what would happen if I couldn't keep up, And honestly, I was really stimulated. Like, it wasn't just like pressure crushing down on me. Like, it was a super positive environment. Everybody was really supportive. It's very different than the other conservatories in that way, at least my experience. Like, it's very positive, it's very family oriented, like all the students have to live in the dorm for 2 years at least, and I think and the dorms right across from the school, so I think that kind of helps glue the student body together a little bit. It's also a very small school, so like you're not gonna miss nobody, you're gonna know everybody's name. I mean, from freshmen to grad students, it was like 800 students, so yeah, so it was a very challenging 4 years. One other thing that was interesting is that because of my family situation that I described and like my financial situation having to take care of me, like I posted about this recently, like I take care of myself, I had to pay my bills. So in the summer, people would go home, do whatever. I would stay in my apartment and work and like save money and I had to still pay my rent, So, but that was a beautiful gift because I gained so much from that. Again, that being alone, I think, like I could focus on my playing. I'd be the only one in the practice rooms. I could, my trumpet teacher still gave me lessons over the summer. I would meet with Mark sometimes. I worked in the library, so I got to, access to the Sibley Music Library. It's the largest music library in the US. It's actually North America. So I could just look at so many scores. Like it was just, even though it was a little lonely sometimes, it was a blessing. And Rochester in the summer is gorgeous. Shout out to anyone who's looking for a summer symposium. The one at Eastman is incredible. It's with the Rochester Philharmonic Winds, like Scatterday, Hunsberger. It's a super positive environment, and it's like very affordable. And it's like there are not that many people who sign up for it. So like if you want to like actually learn some things, sign on up.
You need to.
Anyway, that's my shameless plug for them. But it was interesting because I kind of felt like I had a dual life. Like I mentioned, I worked at that nightclub, so I had like this whole group of friends and people that I would see at work that knew nothing about music in Eastman, and then I had like my Eastman friends, and I don't know how healthy that was, but to have it be so separate. But it was what it was. But I grew a lot as a person, and cried so hard when I left, graduation day, and yeah. And there was like a breakup involved with that too, but it was just like a very intense 4 years. And then, you left. And I ended up going to Michigan for my master's with Ken Kiesler. And he is a very well-renowned conducting teacher. All of us are working. He's also a very controversial figure. He's not an easy man to study with. He's not an easy person to be around. I think he would not mind hearing that. I think he would agree. He's extremely demanding, for better or for worse. But I had the pleasure of working with other teachers like Michael Hathcock and Jerry Blackstone, and like it was a very talented group of conductors throughout the whole school. So it was a very good 2 years, very productive. And because it was in Ann Arbor, I could live at home, so I saved money and I could like have my mom's food every day, which was very nice, and be there for my dad. I think he was really not doing good at that time, so it was nice. Also very intense, but in a way it wasn't as isolating because I had my family and all that, so that was great.
Yeah. And I saw that like you have been to like Tanglewood as well. Like you have kind of went like all over these places, and all these like big name places. Like everyone knows Eastman, everyone knows Michigan and Tanglewood. Like these experiences, Interlochen, these experiences have truly shaped you to be who you are. What is it like? What do you tell, your students or people that want to go to these places? What do you tell them and how to get there? Or is it truly as like a tropical scene as people might think it is? Because some people are like, oh my gosh, I want to go there, but I only know their name, but they truly don't know what's behind the closed door. What would you say to them?
That's a really good question. I think it's all about exposure, and I'll give you a little. You guys know, if you've heard of Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp?
Yes.
Okay. I went there 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. My 7th grade camp counselor, Mike Matlock. Hi, Mike, if you're watching. He's a saxophonist. He said to me, he's like, because he was an Eastman student, and he was a saxophonist. He was like, you should go to Eastman. I can see you there. And I had no idea what it was. I had no fucking idea. Sorry, I had no clue what it was. I was just like, okay. So I look it up. I'm like, this looks cool. It's like everybody's having a good time. And I tell my mom, she's like, all right, well, you better practice hard because we can't afford that. So, but he just said it to me, and so it got in my head, right?
Right.
I think like the wind, like you know how people say like, you know, your worldview or like how big your world is, like what you're aware of, you know. I think people who might have that view of like it's this tropical place, like I'm never going to experience it. It's a little bit of like explaining to folks that it's actually not so foreign, you know. And I was just lucky that someone had said it to me, you know what I mean? Otherwise I might not have thought about it, you know. Like for the longest time I wanted to go to Michigan as a trumpet major, because I was like, oh, well, anyone from Michigan who's good goes to Michigan, you know, like that. But little did I know about the trumpet teacher there at the time.
Oop.
Didn't know the time.
Wait, was it was it Bill? Mm-hmm.
So I know his son and I were in youth orchestra together.
Oh.
And when I won the audition, there were no challenges in the youth orchestra because it's the University of Michigan Youth Orchestra.
Oh.
And then suddenly there were challenges back. And the first challenge was his son challenging me. And I'll never forget, it happened in front of the whole orchestra, challenging me. I think we were playing Rachmaninoff symphonic dances. And, well, I was that girl, so that's how it went for him.
He was like, well,
he tried to pull like his daddy card, and I was like,
oh.
Damn.
And also, like, this is so gross. Like, I love that guy. He's so sweet. He's actually a tax lawyer now, an international tax lawyer. So, not his son. His son is, but
making that
he
money.
would always have a Burger King cheeseburger right before the rehearsal. Like, his trumpet smelled so bad. Like, even just mentioning it, I want to hurl. Like, what did Maya Angelou say? People forget what you say, they forget what you do, but they'll never forget how they make you feel. He made me feel like he needed to wash his trumpet.
Yeah.
So let me just back up to this question because I think it's an important question. There are people in this whole industry who are successful, who went to tons of different types of schools. There are people who went to smaller schools, who went to big universities, who went to conservatories. Like, you can, if you get the right info, you have the right cocktail of your own personal strengths and abilities and instruction and really drive and perseverance, because that's really what this is all about, because you're going to get tons of rejection. It's going to be hard. You're constantly going to meet people who are better than you, or at least better at something, you know? So learning to kind of get over that, I think, is a huge part of, you know, why people either don't reach their goals or do. But I think if you are one of those people who wants to go to maybe a big name school, like, just reach out to the people that work there, you know, like, if you know, I do like online coaching for conductors. A lot of them are educators and a lot of them want to go back to school. And I've always encouraged them to do that. Reach out to the professor and go visit the school if you have the means to do so. If not, try to get a Zoom call. And like, I've never once had someone come back to me and be like, oh, they didn't answer me, or they won't meet with me. You know, I met a lot of fancy, famous people. Everybody's still a person, you know? And especially in this field, if you say, oh, I really want to learn from you, I want to learn what you have to say, I want to know about what you have to offer, like, most people are very flattered by that, and they will make time for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if they won't, try again. Be persistent, you know? Mm-hmm. But for me, it's less about the name and more about, like, because you have to understand, like, if you went to Curtis, you went to Juilliard, you look down at Eastman. So there's like a hierarchy here, right? Some people look up to Eastman like, oh God, that's the best school you could go to. But there is always, you know, the next level that think, oh, I would never go there, you know? So it just depends, you know, it just depends. I mean, I love this example of Rice University, because Rice didn't used to be 30 years ago like the place, but now it's the place.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? With the Shepherd Society grad program is full ride. They've been poaching faculty from all over the country. Like, they built the thing, and now it's the place. but like that wasn't the case before. There was good faculty, but it didn't have that reputation. So things are always changing and shifting. You know, in the 80s, Eastman was like the place, especially if you played a wind instrument, you know, because there weren't that many great places to study. They had the top faculty, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I would say instead of one school getting worse, I would say that people who got their DMAs from Eastman and other good places are now teaching at all the other schools. Right. So like the whole level is higher now. So that's what I mean. You can get the right info and not have to go and pay that huge amount of money, right? Also, I really stress to people that like studying privately is like such a good use of your time and effort and money, right? If you like, let's just say you're an in-service teacher and you want to get better, or you're an in-service teacher and you want to eventually go perform, just invest instead of going back to school and like uprooting your whole life, like try studying with people for a while, taking lessons, you know. You can get the information you need without like uprooting your entire life, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about information, you know. How do I do this? How do I practice? How do I think about this? So much of it is process oriented, you know. So I guess the long answer, that's the long answer. The short answer is like, don't be afraid to reach out, research the places. And we have this little like fear gremlin in all of us where like the unknown is very triggering and it blocks us from like reaching out and from doing a research. And that little thing in you, I have it too, that's like, you know, like I'll be like, Kurt, there's a job posting, but I don't want to go look at it. Like, go look it up for me. I'm too afraid. Like, I just don't want to do it. You know what I mean? I know I need to, but I don't want to. Like, can you help me? So that thing in you that's afraid, that's intimidated, that feels like maybe I don't belong there, maybe I'll never be good enough. You don't know until you try. And, you know, especially like Michigan, there were people who are auditioning with me who auditioned several times, several years in a row to get in, you know, to Ken's program. So if you don't get it the first time, you can always try again, you know, and there's multiple ways to like succeed. You don't just have to go to a name school. I happen to have like a nice, like you listed, pedigree, I suppose, but there are people from all over. Like Mike Sachs, principal trumpet of Cleveland, went to Cal State or something, and he was a history major, and he just studied privately.
Wow.
With Thomas Stevens, but you know, an amazing player. But I'm saying, like, there are lots of ways to get what you need in this business.
Information. I think that's the big thing is
correct.
The giving of information, and we talk about this on the podcast about some people gatekeeping information, and it's like, to what point that's hindering us? If what are we doing that for? Shouldn't the purpose of what we do is to inform the next generation to be better than we were, so that the level continues to rise? That's what we want in our field and in our art as well. Because if we let this thing become so stagnant, we will cease to exist. That is the thing about art. It is always made people think about, ooh, that person was thinking on a different level. Let's try to get to where they are. But if we start to truly be with the common folk, or, you know, just the regular people, then what makes us different? What makes an artist different from a person who just, and no shade to these people, just clock into a 9 to 5 and look at a computer?
Yeah.
What's the difference, you know?
I know, to piggyback off of that, college teachers, like instrumental applied faculty, will, when they have a prospective student, will hold back a little bit of like their special sauce to make them come there. I'm sorry, I got one way of teaching. It's on or it's off. And when it's off, I'm still drinking coffee. When it's on, I'm still drinking coffee. So we're going to do it no matter what. And you're going to get everything I have within that 1 hour of your prospective lesson, because it's not going to be the teaching differences or teaching philosophy, because some high schoolers still don't understand whose Kool-Aid they want to drink and whose studio they want to be in for 4 years. I think it comes down to personality. Like, if they end up liking me, that's cool. If they didn't, I still gave them at least one thing that might stick with them when they go on their journey. I helped them in the one step that, like, oh, I thought of it this way and I was more successful in this other audition. I'm proud of you no matter what. Any prospective student comes in, I want them all to be successful, even if they don't come to my university. We cannot hold back just because it doesn't gain us money in like the next 4 years. Because people will eventually start to come when you are saying the things that people want to hear, or if you find the people that want to study with you.
Right.
And when you do the things you do. So that's another thing that irritates me sometimes. They're like, yeah, they kind of like didn't say like these things that you said they were going to say. I'm like, well, everybody I know who studied with them says they're going to talk about this stuff. And then they didn't on this perspective lesson. That makes me wary that you have to then like be about them before they like teach you. No, just teach.
That's not
just
right.
Teach whoever's in front of you.
Also, like I learned this from Oprah on that exact point. Like you receive more when you give more.
Mm.
So why are you holding back?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Come on.
if your goal is to have the best studio and have the best students who do well in any field, if we're essentially like, especially conductors, teachers, we're in the service industry. We're to serve the music. We're to serve the people in front of us. We're to serve the people behind us. We are in service of others. Like we are there to facilitate others' success. So yeah, that whole mindset of like holding back, and I don't think that's right. I've experienced that. I will say to someone, I don't think that I can fix this aspect of your playing or your conducting in this one session, but you should think about this idea and over the next couple of months continue to do X, Y, Z. That's not holding back. That's just like being realistic.
It's being true. It's being true. I mean, I've been clinicking high school bands, and there was one high school band that wanted me to fix their concert F. And I was just like, okay, well, here are my thoughts on how your concert F sounds. Boom, 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 boom. And then so I worked and the sound changed, and I turned to the director. I was like, well, is this what you wanted to hear? And he said something to the fact of like, it's different, but I'm not sure if it's like the biggest change, like I guess night and day change. And I was like, well, that's the thing. It's not going to be, right now, because one, we forget that the people in front of us are human beings and they are not robots. They cannot just change at the drop of a dime. So the fact that I'm giving something that is like an opposing opinion to what they've known for how many months now or how many years now, and one, you can already hear a change in just 5 minutes. Think about if they continue to have that change every single day they play this concert F. By at least 2 weeks, or honestly, 4 days, you're going to hear a difference and it's just going to change. So I have this approach to teaching as well of, okay, yes, maybe this didn't change today, but the foundation is there. The roots are there. So I know that they are going to, now the seed is planted. Now we're going to reap what we have sown. So long as we do those things, it will change. But I just think a lot of people just forget that we have human beings. Our job is with human beings, and we cannot always expect that they can read our minds or they just know what we want them to do and do it right then and there. Sometimes it takes a little TLC, okay? Sometimes it takes that, and that's coming from a teacher standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, how do you spell love? Time.
Ooh. That's it.
I mean, this whole, we can go there. This whole band pedagogy thing with the concert app. I mean, I was in Houston where this all comes from with Eddie Green, Lord rest his soul. You know what I mean? And mad respect, but there are 11 other notes too, honey.
Ooh.
I mean, I agree. It's a tool. It's a tool for conceptualizing it's a model for how we want to play everything else. I get that. But there are very few pieces that are just sustained notes. So, transferring that skill, I think, is also important. And the obsession over it, it needs to be darker, it needs to have more bass, or it needs to have less this, or, I've seen it. I've seen people do it every day with their group and then see it not really, they pull out a piece and they're still not, it's not like all the other notes sound great. again, it's a model. I get it. I'm not saying we should throw the whole thing away and never do it again. But this, like, it's like a cult, this cult of the concert F. It's like, give me a break. Also, we have a clarinetist here. No, is concert F a good note on the clarinet? No, it's like one of the worst.
Yes, it actually is.
It's literally the worst, and I bet it's similar on some instruments too. Like why that note? Okay, maybe it's one of the easiest notes to get somebody to play when they're beginning. I get that. Maybe that's what it is. Fingering wise, I don't know. But
right.
it's
good old flute. F. Yes, of course. Right. I mean, it's like it's just one of those things that I think we are still in our profession. We harp a lot of things on old traditions that I think are just the reason we continue to do them is because they're traditions. Same thing with rep. I think sometimes that we still do certain things is because it's tradition. And I'm like, well, I think there are more modern pieces who addresses the same things and the same teaching tools that we can let this one go and if we were to dive into the composer and what the true intentions of this piece was, I'm pretty sure in today's society, we should not be, programming this or putting this on, big posters or something like that. Let's move on. And I think I've been saying this every podcast. Why is it the norm for if a person from 60 years ago was to come into an orchestra room or a band room and know exactly what to do? Like they know, okay, I need to do this. This is how a rehearsal is going to go, blah, blah, blah. I mean, to a certain point, that's fine. But also that means we haven't progressed much when we look at it on a timeline. Yeah. So really, what are we doing? Are we truly moving the dial forward? Or have we truly been just stagnant and we've just been putting Band-Aids on a much bigger problem?
Band-Aid. Ha ha ha. That's funny. Anyways, also with the old repertoire, you do not have to do the same interpretation. You do not have to do the same interpretation. Okay? Read what's on the page. Read like the stuff and just don't listen to this one recording and just do the one record. We already have that recording. It already exists. We all listen to it. Create another one. Do something different. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
It's very true. However, that would require that the person you're speaking to knows how to read the information in the score and make another interpretation. Which brings me to a point that is really not anybody's fault, but I've never been a full-time public school teacher, and those people, when I put them all in my arms, I want to give them all a giant hug because they have one of the hardest jobs on the planet, especially being a band teacher, because you're actually responsible for teaching like 10 subjects in one class. But you're given 1, maybe 2 semesters in college to work on your conducting, and then there's that one class where they like prep you for student teaching where you look at a score and they like teach you that. And maybe there are amazing programs out there I don't know about that have a much more extensive preparation. But I feel like I just believe, knowing what I've had to go through to get to this point, that's not enough training for someone who's, even if you're not conducting every second, you're on your podium 90% of your teaching day, And I think that people just need, the 4 years is not enough. I'm not saying everybody has to get a master's, but I think there should be more, I say this all the time, should be more quality outlets for in-service teachers and other people who want to improve their conducting during the year, whether it be lessons, whether it be like, I don't even know, send your video in and get comments. Like there's got to be some better way than in the middle of the summer, go do a week of conducting and then come back. You don't get a chance to practice it with your group, I don't know. I just think that people need more information about how to do these things. They need encouragement to do the things, to work on the things they're not good at. Because nobody's perfect. We all have stuff we have to fix. I work on my skills every single day. If you don't use it, you lose it. And it's just to your point about the interpretation thing, it just begs the question of like, if you told someone like, you don't have to do it the way it's on the recording, then how would they figure it out? They could if they had the tools. right?
Yeah.
But there are people in this world, maybe even in our counties, your county and my county, who actually think that making an interpretation of a piece has nothing to do with being a music teacher. There are people who think that. And it's true, you got to make the children hold the instrument right. You got to make them do all the things. You got to teach that stuff. But like, they're all doing that so that they can make music, right? So like, it's like, begin with the end in mind kind of a thing. And I guess, there's a reason, you're not just gonna be like, okay, today, children, we're going to talk about the phrase structure of how corresponds. We're not going to do that. Like, there's different chapters in life. But, when I was in Alabama, I was clinicking a lot of bands. And the idea of making musical choices and just that the score is like a thing that you have to understand and interpret. Most people, that was just like not on there. Not in the sphere of reality. And it's really not their fault. I'm not condemning those people. I'm not saying they're bad. They should be taken out of the classroom. It like you said, Anthony, it's all regurgitation of practices from before. Yeah, they are doing what either their high school band director did or what their college band director did, and they're just copying that, and they think that that's enough, and that might have been enough for that group at that time, but I think we need some values overhaul in general. I agree. Musical values, and a lot of people don't want to do it because actually to be a really good musician is really hard work all the time. And when you are overworked already, you don't want someone telling you have to work harder to do your job. I mean, I saw these people, these poor teachers, some of them. I mean, some of them were thriving and, living their best life, but some of them were like, looked like they hadn't slept in months, So I'm not going to tell that person, how's your B flat transposition? I want to practice that with me, because they need a nap.
Yeah.
So the whole system is kind of like, somebody should not be so wrung out that they can't not only take care of themselves physically, but like maintain their own level, So I don't know what the answer is.
It's one of those age old something. We'll just, I guess, cross the bridge when we get there. I don't know. I think that when you find peace in your inner self, I think then you can come into the job. It goes back to what we're talking about, the work-life balance, whatever that truly means. If you are at peace within your personal life, then your job or your passion or things that way, the blocks can finally be put into place. So I think go on the journey with yourself first before you can take on a journey in your classroom. Make sure you are as a whole before you try to make your students or someone else whole. So that's it. But Kevin, Right. Kevin, how can everybody find you, follow you and everything so that people keep up with you, all the Relative Pitch listeners?
Oh, well, I'm on Instagram, Conductor K Fitz.
Yes.
K Fitz, like Kevin Fitzgerald. And you can find me also via email, which is just conductorkfitz@gmail.com. But don't forget the K, because it'll go to a train conductor in New Jersey.
Oh.
Like, he gets a lot of my emails, and so we're like pen pals now. It's hilarious.
Oh, well, thank you so much for volunteering your time today to come on to Relative Pitch while you're technically on the clock. So I
know. Yeah, the concert's going on 11 minutes in. So,
well, thank you so much for being here. And please, Relative Pitch members and everybody, go follow Kevin down below. We'll link all of his things down. And please follow him as he takes on the next part of his journey as well. So until next time, thank you, everybody, for having a listen. See y'all next week. Bye.